Are we open?
Go ahead.
The board will now come to order. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Tyus.
Present.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Present.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Present.
Alderwoman Gracia.
Present.
Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice.
Present.
Alderman Gunther.
Present.
Alderman Balmer.
Present.
Alderwoman Martin.
Present.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Here.
Alderwoman Howard.
Present.
Alderwoman Green.
Present.
Alderman Odenberg.
Present.
Alderman Roddy.
Present.
Alderman Todd.
Present.
Alderwoman Davis.
Present.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Present.
Alderman Muhammad.
Here.
Alderman Boyd. Alderman Vaccaro.
Present.
Alderman Ryan.
Here.
Alderman Cone.
Present.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Here.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Back wrong time.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Present.
President Reed.
Sorry, you did it right.
President Reed.
Here.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Kotar. Alderman Boyd.
Present.
25 present.
Quorum being present, we're going to lead today in prayer. But before we start the prayer, please join me in a moment of silence for those who have those who we've lost to coronavirus and other acts of violence this past week. Giving all honor to God, Almighty God, source of all authority, we humbly ask guidance in our deliberations and wisdom in our conclusions. Amen. We will dispense with line item 3, introduction of honored guests. Any introduction of honored guests? Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes, as always, my good friend, I'd like to have as my honored guest, Greg Meyer.
Welcome, Greg. Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Any further introductions? Approval of the minutes.
Approval of the minutes, May 15th, 2020.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on approval of the minutes.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for approval of the minutes dated May 15th, 2020.
Been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from 13th to 10th and a whole host of others. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Aye.
Report of city officials.
Report of city officials can be found in A, B, and C of the agenda and has been placed in the alderman's mailboxes.
We will dispense with line items 7 through 10, first reading of board bills.
Board Bill 29, sponsored by Alderman Vaccaro, an ordinance submitted to the qualified voters of the City of St. Louis, a proposal to revise Section 2 of Article 8 of the City of St. Louis Charter, which requires city employees to reside within the boundaries of City of St. Louis and thus allow said employees, except for city agency and department directors appointed by the mayor to reside outside of the boundaries of the city of St. Louis, and providing for an election to be held for voting on the proposed revision and the manner of voting thereat, and for the publication, certification, deposit, and recording of this ordinance and containing an emergency clause. Board Bill 30, sponsored by Alderwoman Davis, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated January the 21st, 2020 for the 3603 Cass Avenue area. Board Bill 31, sponsored by Alderman Roddy, an ordinance approving a redevelopment plan dated January 21st, 2020 for the 1417 through 1433 Tower Grove Avenue area. That is the extent of first reading of board bills.
Reference to committee.
To the Public Employee Committee, Board Bill 29. To the Neighborhood Development Committee, Board Bill 30 and 31. That is the extent of reference to committee.
Second reading.
The following board bill was reported out of Health and Human Services with a due pass recommendation. Board Bill 25, sponsored by Alderwoman Spencer, an ordinance authorizing and directing the director of the City of St. Louis Department of Health to enter into and execute a contract agreement with the National Association of County and Health and City Health Officials as part of the Center for Disease Control and Prevention Grant, CFDA 93421, to fund use of a public health and safety team toolkit upon approval of the Board of Estimate and Apportionment, and to expend funds by entering into contracts or otherwise for the grant purposes and containing an emergency clause. That is the extent of second reading. Report of standing committees.
We dispense with line item 14, perfection consent.
Board Bill 10, sponsored by Alderwoman Howard, an ordinance repealing City of St. Louis Ordinance 70973 pertaining to parking within the 5347 Nottingham Parking District, and enacting in a new ordinance revising the name of said parking district, adding to its location, establishing restriction for parking within the district, and authorized placement of permit parking only signs, and containing a definitions clause, penalty clause, and an emergency clause. That is the extent of perfection consent.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on motion for perfection consent.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the perfection consent calendar.
Entertain a second on that motion.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from 13th and Alderman from the 23rd. Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board bills for perfection.
Board Bill 13, sponsored by Alderman Boyd, an ordinance recommended by the Parking Commission and Board of Estimate and Apportionment, making appropriation for the transfer of the sum of $5 million from the parking meter fund to the General Reserve Fund of the City of St. Louis to help offset expenditures from the General Reserve Fund necessitated by the COVID-19 pandemic and the extraordinary costs incurred by the city in its efforts to protect the health and well-being of the public, and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from 22nd, recognize on the perfection of board bill number 13.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for perfection of board bill 13.
It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, entertain a
Second.
seconded by the Alderman from the 10th and the 23rd. Alderman from the 22nd, please proceed.
Board Bill 13 is a very important legislation. As we all know, not only are we dealing with a health crisis in COVID-19, we're also getting ready to deal with a financial crisis in the city of St. Louis. And just to kind of put it in perspective, $5 million is like $5 million for affordable housing, where we can take care of our unhoused population. $5 million looks like $5 million for health care, where we can take care of people that have mental health issues and other health crises in their life. I am very interested in wanting to save as many jobs in the city of St. Louis. I know being on Ways and Means, my colleagues have a very tough job dealing with this budget, and we should be looking as leaders for every opportunity we have to help with the budget shortfalls. And I just ask for your favorable consideration.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the first.
Mr. President, members of the board, if the Alderman from the 22nd would yield.
Alderman from the 22nd will yield the question to the Alderwoman from the first.
Absolutely.
Alderman from the first, please proceed.
Alderman, I see here that the parking meter fund is going to go to the general reserve fund of the city of St. Louis. Is that a different fund than the regular general revenue fund?
That's correct.
Okay, so it's not going to be necessarily used to for jobs and things at this point. It's a reserve in case we need it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how much do we have in our general reserve fund now? Do you know?
It's my understanding that we have about 42.8 million, if I remember correctly, or somewhere around there.
$42.8 million. And this $5 million that is being transferred from the parking commission, how much is in that fund right now?
Well, right now, there is a little over $14 million in unrestricted reserves, and there's $8.8 million in restricted reserves to cover bond reserves. That's part of the bond reserve. So there's about 22 million.
And what is 22 million total?
That's correct. A little over 22.
And what is the minimum amount that is required for reserves so as not to affect the bond and the credit rating? Do you know?
Well, first of all, the credit rating, I think all government agencies across the country right now is going to have a hit on their credit rating because almost everybody's going to probably have to dip into the reserve funds to make ends meet. However, I think the parking commission, I know the parking commission is a much better position than the city of St. Louis as a whole if you use it as an entity, comparing one entity to another. And there's plenty of reserves. As far as the exact amount of money that's required, that's up to the interpretation. You may have one financial analyst say, I think you should have 10 million. Somebody else may say 30 million.
Was there any report to the parking commission from any financial analyst on either side that said what the minimum amount needed would be?
No.
So you didn't get any kind of report. So how was this $5 million? Where did you come up with the sum of $5 million?
Well, I thought that was a reasonable amount of money since we had 14 million in surplus.
But you just told me that different credit analysis of financial people would come with maybe different amounts of what should be surplus. We got, what did you say? We have 46 million in the cities, which I understand is a citywide entity, not one particular department. But it would seem to me that we would, before we would transfer this kind of money, that we would get some kind of analysis about what is the required minimum. And I understand what you're saying, that everybody's going to take a hit. But there's a such thing as taking a hit, and then there's the thing as being crippling. So can you explain to me why you just decided to take $5 million without at least getting some kind of analysis?
Well, and from my understanding, when you have restricted reserves, the credit rating agencies are looking pretty much at that as far as giving you a particular type of rating. And certainly if you ever have to go into it, that will become an issue. And one of the things that really can impact it, especially with our bonds, is that when we project a certain amount of revenue and for our operating, project a certain amount of revenues at the end of the year, if we do things that impede those revenue projections, then it puts us at risk. But
so, well, we've all had to do things that impede that. That's why we don't have money in the city. We've had to close down things, which we should. And I agreed with. I wish we would have been even more aggressive with that. The parking commission, rather the treasurer, decided not to put her people out on the streets collecting tickets. I agree with that. If I was a person out writing tickets, I would not have been out there doing it. So I would have lost my job if they would have said you have to do that. So I think both the mayor and the treasurer made some correct decisions about things that are very hard, because I understand people need to work. So as you said, we are going to lose revenue, but hopefully we saved lives. I looked across the United States and I saw that other people were doing things similar or even more restrictive. And I really looked to New York and California and places like in Washington, where my family lives, a lot of them, to see the things that they were doing to save lives. So everybody is debatable to everybody who should have done what, but everybody who took a step to save lives by closing things down, I've supported them, be it the mayor or the treasurer, the president of the board, or whoever closing the board. I support that. because I don't want to be in the position that we've made a decision that we cost people's lives. I think that on federal level, we did not move fast enough. And the things I'm reading in the paper now, if we had done some things earlier, it would have saved up to 39,000 lives. So, yes, if you're referring to bringing the people off of the street so they didn't write tickets, I thought that was absolutely the right thing to do. But is there a way that you could get any kind of financial report from somebody before we finish? I know we're doing perfection now, but we still got to do third reading. Is there a way that we could get some kind of analysis from somebody about how this $5 million will affect the treasurer? I mean, the parking commission and the treasurer's department?
I can certainly request that.
Okay, is that a big cost to get that?
I'm not sure. I think we have, matter of fact, I know we have somebody on our staff, Gerard Howlands, Dr. Howlands, who's a financial wizard. And I did use his advice when I looked at using this as an opportunity, and he didn't have a big problem with it. He thought it was reasonable, and certainly we can have the treasurer submit from her financial advisor. But here's what we don't need to get into is one person, like, you know, you're a lawyer, right? So two lawyers go into a courtroom and you argue your case. I think right now what's more important than anything is the fact that we need to be concerned about saving lives and the quality of life of the people that we represent. So if we did 10 million, I wouldn't care if the financial advisor came back and said, well, you know, your credit rating is going to be downgraded because, you know, you really should have had that at a level of 15 million. That's unacceptable to me when we're dealing with people's lives. We are all elected to take care of the people. So right now we're dealing with a crisis. So all these AAA credit ratings and all that stuff, that doesn't matter right now.
Partially, I agree with you. And if you were putting this in the general revenue and we had done everything to make sure that we cut all our costs and did the things we need to, I would not have a problem. When we're just going to put that into a fund, reserve fund, then that is not as critical to me. That becomes something different. Since you said Dr. Hollins gave you a report, I would like to see something written from him. And I also would like to see something written from the treasurer's office, because I got a different report from them. And so I would like to see what each person representing different perspectives thinks is a good amount that should stay in the treasurer's office before it gets affected. And if we have to affect people's budget, then we ourselves should go and do a lot of house cleaning. I know where there's about $20 million right now. We need to do a lot of house cleaning if we're going to be affecting people's budget and not care about credit ratings, because that will also cost us money that we could be using for other things in the future. So can you get me a report by next week, before next week?
Well, first of all, I will ask Dr. Hollins to prepare a report, but I did not say that he gave me a report. What I said is I consulted with him and he thought it was reasonable. I would ask him if he would prepare a formal report, yes. And I'm sure
I appreciate it.
Have one. Do you have one from the treasurer right now that you can share?
No, I'm going to request the very same thing. Don't worry. And you know, if I say I am, I'm going to request the very same thing. Not verbal, I want it written, and I will share it with you.
But let me ask you this, Alderwoman. What difference does it make in this crisis?
Because it's, again, let me say again, you're putting the money into a reserve fund. You are not putting it into an emergency fund that we need to spend now. So we have a minute. So it may make a difference. And it makes a difference because we're not doing all the things that we should be doing as a city. Okay, so we haven't cut the things that we need to cut, the fat. When I got to this Board of Aldermen originally, we had just started paying people over $25,000. Mayor Conway had just changed the charter. The charter used to only let people make $25,000. We got people that made $150,000 and went in a year's time to $175,000. $175,000, got $25,000 raises. So there's a lot of fat in our own budget that we need to be looking at. And that's what it makes a difference to me. If we go digging in everybody else's budget, we ought to cut the fat in our own first. So if it was a real extreme emergency and we had to buy new fire trucks immediately and we weren't putting it in a reserve, then that's an emergency. But I don't hear that as an emergency. So that's why I want to see the reports. I'd appreciate if you can do that for me.
Do that, but let me be also clear that the money in the parking meter fund belongs to the city of St. Louis. That's the people's money at the end of the day. So it's not about, picking on somebody else's, department of funds. It's the people's money at the end of the day. And so we have every right, and that's why I'm working so hard to help change the law to make sure that we move all the parking revenues over to the city of St. Louis. Then we wouldn't even have to have these type of discussions because it would be part of the general revenue budget anyway. And I look forward to that happening.
Alderman, I don't have an argument about the people's money. I often argue not to give the people's money, like that $400 million we just reserved for the next 40 years for the convention center. I think we should kill that deal and take that $6 million back. So I don't really want to get into a debate about the people's money. I absolutely agree. All of it is the people's money. It's how we spend it and what we do with it that makes a difference. So I have no further questions. You've answered my questions. Mr. President, I have no further questions, and I will request a roll call, please.
Alderwoman from the 8th. Alderwoman from the 8th.
There we go.
All right.
President, members of the board, I want to thank the Alderwoman from the 1st. She raised a lot of the concerns that I have here. And so I am also looking forward to the financial report. And while I do agree that there are a lot of expenses that we have and there is an immediate need, my concerns are also around that this is being moved into the reserve fund. And I have significant questions about accountability towards our COVID-19 expenditures already as a city. And the transparency dashboard that we currently have has no data past April 6th. And so if we are going to be tracking expenditures and making sure that we are allocating the $35 million CARES Act money and potentially this $5 million, I would just like to see where it is that money is going so that we are keeping track of the people's money as we are the stewards of that as a city. So thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 21st.
Hey, thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to commend the Alderman from the 22nd Ward for introducing this particular bill. We are in a budget shortfall. We are in a financial crisis in our city, and I commend his leadership on sponsoring and spearheading this important legislation. I think we're getting a little off track talking about where the money is going to go. Right now, we have the money in our arsenal, and that is the most important tool that we can ask for. If he did not introduce his legislation, we would not have $5 million to even figure out where we're going to allocate it to offset the financial toll that this crisis is taking on our city. So I think we need to move this board bill forward. I would encourage all of my colleagues to vote yay. And again, I commend the leadership of Alderman Boyd. Thank you, Alderman Boyd, for introducing this legislation. No further comments, Mr. President.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 23rd.
Yes. Thank you for recognizing me. The hand up thing wasn't working right. So
okay.
Anyway,
oh, you're welcome.
And I know I brought this up over and over in Ways and Means. You know, even though it goes to the reserves, we need to use part of the reserves, and this will help offset that for the ward capital, because the people are paying a lot of taxes. In my neighborhood, an average home is around $3,000 a year just in taxes. And to say we're not going to do sidewalks, streets, speed humps, lights, to take the ward capital away is wrong. I will agree with the Alderwoman from the 1st. She helped me understand that they really can't take the ward capital away because it's by ordinance that it's passed. I also know we can't just stand around on this budget. So one of the places I would like to see that $5 million, actually $8 million, is to restore the ward capital, which is very important to the overall city because it pertains to getting the rest of the LED lights in. There's about half in, getting more in saves money. It's about getting roads patched, so one of the places, and I brought it up over and over in Ways and Means, is I'm proposing that as this goes into the general revenue, that the one place it should come out to is fixing the roads and the lights and the things that people are paying for. So I just wanted to put that out there. I appreciate the Alderwoman from the first. She's very right in what she said about this actually not being able to be taken out. But I also understand in a budget crisis that we're having, this money can go toward, even though it goes in the general fund, it'll raise that, making it a little bit easier and less taxing to take that out and get it into ward capital so we can finish our projects. I can't even use my park funds because I can't even do the matching funds to the parks because I spend all of the money that I have doing what we can get done. I don't hold a lot. And I understand in some wards they have to because some of the roads are so huge and some of the projects are so big that you have to hold on to a lot of money. It isn't that you don't want to spend it. It's just the needs in my ward are more immediate and smaller. So I'm able to spend it. In some wards, you have to save a whole bunch of money to do the major projects that need to be done. So I do want to say I support this bill. I would ask that it goes through. And I do plan in Ways and Means to suggest that we take from the reserves and put something back into ward capital. Thank you. And that's really all my whole comment. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 27th.
I'm confused. So are we voting on the bill as it is, or are we voting for changes from what the recommendations are?
No, there hasn't been any amendments or any proposed amendments. So the only thing that's before us right now is the bill as it stands.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? No further discussion. Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize to close.
Mr. President, members of the board, this bill is basically about putting the people first. You know, we must put the people before credit ratings. We must put the people over just profits. It's about the people. And I'm very interested in making sure that we can continue to serve our community with the best quality of services that they deserve. And I encourage everybody to support this bill.
All right, thank you. It's been moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, seconded by the Alderman from the 10th and the 23rd that we perfect Board Bill number 13. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderwoman Tyus.
No.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia.
Aye.
Alderman Cawthorn. Alderwoman Rice.
No.
Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
I think she said Alderwoman Martin.
Oh, sorry, I can't hear.
Madam Clerk, we can't hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I can't hear. I never heard my name called. I didn't hear Volman.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Green.
No.
Alderman Oldenburg. Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Aye.
Alderman Roddy.
Aye.
Alderman Todd,
Pass.
Alderwoman Davis,
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer,
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad,
Aye.
Alderman Boyd,
I couldn't hear that.
She said Alderman Boyd. Aye. Yeah. Alderman Boyd. You're on mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Aye.
Okay.
Alderman Vaccaro,
Aye.
Alderman Ryan,
Aye.
Alderman Cone,
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard,
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd,
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro,
Aye.
President Reed,
Aye.
Alderman Bosley, Alderman Kotar, Alderman Balmer,
Aye.
Alderman Todd,
Abstain.
$21 aye votes, 3 no votes, and 1 abstain.
All right, vote, sustain the motion of the Alderman from the 22nd and perfected Board Bill number 13.
Board Bill 8, sponsored by Alderwoman Clark Hubbard and the following alderpersons: Vaccaro, Muhammad, and Gracia, Hamboy, Kotar, Middlebrook, Oldenburg, Martin, Jeffrey Boyd, and Bosley. An ordinance calling and providing for the holding of an election in the city of St. Louis on November 3rd, 2020, for the purpose of submitting to the qualified electors of the city of St. Louis a proposal to levy and collect a property tax of 6 cents per each $100 of assessed valuation, in addition to the current authorized levy of 19 cents per each $100 of assessed valuation as provided for in Section 210860 Revised Statutes of Missouri, for the purpose of providing additional funding to the community children's services, and in particular to fund early childhood services to children aged 5 years and younger.
Alderman from the 26th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 8.
Thank you, Mr. President. Members of the board, I move to perfect Board Bill 8.
It's been moved by the Alderman from 26.
Second.
Second. Entertain a second.
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 Someone has it. Hold on for a second. Thank you. Let's start that over. I entertain a second on that motion.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from 22nd and Alderman from the 21st. Alderman from the 26th, please proceed.
Mr. President, Board Bill 8 simply puts on the November 3rd ballot additional increase to the already in place 2004 19-cent levy, a 6-cent levy, so that it brings it up to the cap of 25 cents. What this does is increases and strengthens community-led, community-based, and community-placed early childhood education in some of our most underserved and sometimes even forgotten neighborhoods and communities. One thing that I would want to note is that I know that we now are in a pandemic. We are in times that none of us have experienced before. But what I do want to say is that when this goes into place, we won't be in the place we're in now. In talking with Mike Duffin last night, he assured me, the St. Louis City Assessor, that when it passes today, we won't wake up with this additional 6-cent levy. When it passes in November, we won't wake up with an additional 6-cent levy. Actually, this levy will not go into place till 2021, and it won't even be starting to be collected till 2022. We have so much work that needs to be done now. Also, I thought about monies that might come in as a result of what we're going through with the pandemic, but that'll be more. That'll be a plus. In addition to this, because what's real is the 2.3 million that is kind of saying that we'll be able to collect from this levy. It's just a drop in the bucket of what we need to ensure a better start for 0 to 5 in our communities and in the city of St. Louis. So that's why it was important for me to make sure that I note that, and that I don't want people to just be scared or frightened or nervous about increased taxes. I know some people just don't like increasing taxes, but at the same time, it takes money to move missions. And I believe there's no better way to invest in our children in the city of St. Louis than to raise these kind of funds for them. So with that, I open myself up for questions and comments.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 19th.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I just wanted to have a very brief comment, because I don't think we can say enough to give some empathy and understanding to our constituency. As we know, we just went through the assessment for our properties, and many of our communities, which is a plus, their property values had increased. The average person is paying somewhere between $700 to $1,200 more. And some communities it's $2,000 more on their assessment. Also, with this crisis that we're in, people are losing their jobs. They're in jeopardy of losing their homes. They're just in jeopardy of losing their health. So many things that they have on their minds right now. And so I want the public to know that there is some empathy there for you. And I know that you probably feel a certain kind of way that we are presenting something that says, I need you to think about increasing taxes right now. November is really too soon. Every indication says that we will probably be in this same situation in November, probably waiting till next election cycle in March or April would have given people time to have some kind of recuperation or remedy and maybe think a little bit differently. So I know that early childhood education is critical. No one could know that more or care about it more than I do. And I've spent the last 25 years supporting education by serving on the school board here in the city, volunteering with Head Start programs, serving on the National School Board, serving on the Council of Urban Boards of Education, and also serving on the platform for education for 2 presidents. So I get it, I believe in it, but I also have a lot of empathy for people of today and where we are. It's just difficult. And I just wanted to say that so that if nothing else, we can give our public some empathy by putting this on their mind right now. And I plan to vote for it. I believe that it is important, but I also want people to know that we do care. Thank you, Mr. President.
All right, any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 1st.
Mr. President, members of the board. First of all, I'd like to commend the sponsor for bringing a property tax instead of a sales tax. Since I've been involved with the Board of Aldermen some 29 years, we bring sales tax because it's much easier to get people to okay sales tax. Sales tax are regressive. So you are bold and innovative to come with a property tax. I agree with most of what the Alderwoman from the 19th said about there are concerns. A lot of reasons we don't bring sales taxes, property taxes, is because people tend to be voting their pocket and they say no. They think that the sales tax can be spread out better than a property tax. Our youth are absolutely important. And so I think this is an important bill. Mr. President, members of the board, I would ask if the sponsor would yield.
Alderwoman from the 26th will yield to the Alderwoman from the 1st.
Absolutely.
Alderwoman from the 1st, please proceed.
Alderwoman, I've been here when the Alderman from the 27th came up with a great idea about proposing a tax for low to moderate income, which right now April 4 Griffin is in charge of that program, and lots of money came in, and lots of money was taken by the previous administrations for things that it should not have been. Okay, and so my question to you is, what are your safeguards? We get this money in and it gets passed. What are your safeguards? Because just today, Alderman Vaccaro was talking about the ward capital money. This current administration and Paul Payne are getting a letter from me because they cannot take our money from the ward capital money. That was part of the agreement when we passed this bill. There are 4 people here that still know about it. That would be Joe Roddy, myself, Terry Kennedy, and then Stephen Conway over in the mayor's office. We were here when we took the vote. So what happens is administrations that come afterward will sometimes come after the money and try to change it and put it someplace else. What are the conditions so that this will only be able to be spent for what you want? And do you have any conditions in there? And if you don't, my question would be, would you be open to putting some in there?
Yes, ma'am. Well, the biggest and most important condition is that this money doesn't come to the city. It goes to the mental health board, which is already collecting and administrating the 19-cent levy. And so this additional 6 cents will continue to go to them. What they have committed is that the additional monies that will be raised will strengthen and impact what's already in place and specifically go to underserved, again, like I said, a lot of times forgotten communities, neighborhoods, and community-led early childhood education programs. 0 to 5, which means for me as a proud public school parent, it's going to get kids even more ready to get into St. Louis public schools. And I understand about the timing. The timing was big for me too when I was first presented with this. But the reality was, if it wasn't for COVID, we wouldn't be in the time that they're trying to do it this way now, because they had originally wanted to go through the petition process. But when COVID hit and the stay home orders, they couldn't do it like that. So that's the only reason why it's being presented to us today to be on the November 3rd ballot. It was already in their plans to do it like this. And a lot of this COVID and the pandemic is bringing us together rather than tearing us apart. So that is why I thought it would be okay, you know, and understandable for us to go ahead and work with it during this time. And again, the money goes and is being administered by the mental health board.
So you don't have to convince me. The money that I've seen spent, the billions of dollars spent on sports stadiums, this is a little money compared to that. So I'm already on board. What I'm saying though, you say that it's going to the mental health board. Does it go through our budget system? Because if it does, they will make grabs on it. That's what I am saying to you. Look at the language in your board bill, okay? Because if it goes in any way through our budget system, they will be attempting to do, and especially if you don't have it in your board bill that says this only can be used for this, does it in any way go through our budget system?
It does not go through our budget system. And they have not only assured me of that, they have also assured me that the money will go to, again, and I'm just going to say a lot of the early childhood education systems and programs within North St. Louis and some in South St. Louis, a lot of the underserved and a lot of the communities that really, really need it. And they are great community-led programs. And the process of allocating them through the mental health board is a great community-led process. So they have assured me that the money can't be grabbed. And I'm glad you brought that up so that I could publicly say that that's what they have assured me, and I believe them.
Okay, and who is, when you say they, are you talking about the community health board?
The mental health board, yes, ma'am.
The mental, and so who? My question becomes, who sits on the mental health board and who appoints those people?
Okay, I can get you a list of that. I can try to pull it up now while we're still professional.
No, you don't have to. No,
okay.
You don't have to. I'm just saying, do you know who appoints those people?
No, I don't know exactly.
I'm saying that I do. I'm saying that to say the mayors have a long outreach of how they get to your money. I am not trying to fight against you. I am just trying to give you a note of caution, somebody who's been in for a long time, and things that we've put into place, and then the mayors go right around it. They violate the ordinances and the charters at will, which is what makes us have to then do our job. So I am saying, and I haven't examined this, I am going to vote for it, but I'm going to say, look at your language very, very careful. And if it's not an emergency, go back and put some stronger language, because I think the mayor appoints the people to the board. And therefore, even though you say they can't get to it, they will get to it. And they do it often. And they do all the things they want to do with the money. And then they come after things like your ward capital, like the low to moderate income trust fund and this children's fund. And it won't be the mayor right now. It'll be 2 or 3 mayors in the future when the people who know about this, such as yourself, are not on the board of aldermen and can't bring up these concerns. That's the only thing I'm saying. I am going to support I'm going to support it when I saw that it was a property tax, not a sales tax, and that it was for children, not a sports arena. But I'm just saying, go back to the people you work with, look at it very carefully, because in the future, you'll probably be mad because there will be some mayor that said, oh, we need money. We're in a horrible position because we didn't put money away. We didn't say no to that last stadium, and we're building a hopscotch stadium. And so just be very careful about your money. But I will support your bill. I want to thank you for bringing a property tax instead of a sales tax, because they are very regressive. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I have no further questions, Mr. President.
All right, Alderman from the 23rd.
More just a statement. You know, I put my name on it because it does go to the people to make that decision. And yes, it's a horrible time. And I don't know. I think it's going to be up to the different aldermen on how we present it to our neighborhoods. Because no one's interested, especially over here, in raising their taxes. But I think that they will, if they believe this is going to be for good. And I know you're probably getting tired of this argument, but when you look at the ballot initiative, which I sent to everybody that passed, was very specific in how the ward capital would be spent, where the money would go, how it's given to the police, how it's given to different entities, and what percent is divided into 28 wards for ward capital, which is important. And I know when the alderwoman from the 1st, which I really appreciate her knowledge on all this stuff, asks about safeguards, I would have thought there were plenty of safeguards in this. And how do we go to the people and say, gee, trust us? We're gonna put this money where we say we're gonna put it, when this is a prime example of the money not going where the people voted on. Keeping our wards together, keeping our roads. And as I look back, I don't think we've received, I guess is a better way of saying it. I don't think we've received what we should have received in the past. And I know that we got to get this budget through. Last year, the reason we pushed the budget through is because we got it late. We had no time to really debate it. We just had to get it through. I'm not for tax increases whatsoever, but I think it's important. I think it's going to be up to the people in our neighborhood to make the decision. But one of the things that, has to be trust that we're going to do what we say. And a prime example of us not doing that is the people voted to give the ward capital, and it's not even in the budget. So anyway, I just wanted to make that statement. I do support this. I'm going to vote for it. I'm going to present it to the neighborhood the best way I can. And it's going to be up to them whether they trust what I'm telling them or not. But ultimately, they're going to make that decision. And that's really all I had to say.
Okay. Alderwoman from the 5th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Of course, I support the bill, but I would echo some of the same sentiments as my colleagues. When I first saw the bill, it kind of put me in an awkward space because with everything that's going on, it's hard for me to convince my constituents that we need any form of a tax increase. And so after reading it, I kind of wondered like whose initiative it was and why they took this particular time to do it, because to me, whoever brought these efforts forward, I think that they weren't being considerate of the place that it puts a lot of us in, trying to explain any form of tax increase right now when people are doing so bad, and especially if it's something that's not going to happen to sometime down the line. I think that sometimes you just have to be strategic in how you move things forward. And, you know, people who aren't elected, you know, sometimes they just have an agenda and they have a mission that they're trying to accomplish without any respect or regard for the position that it puts sitting elected officials in light of a pandemic. So I do support it, but I would just hope in the near future that sometimes things can be of great importance, but timing is everything. And I support it, but it's one that I'll definitely have to explain to my constituents, because they have a hard time with personal property tax. So a lot of them have lost their homes, and it wouldn't matter if it's 10 cents, 12 cents, 5 cents, or whatever it is, it's something to them. So although I support it, I just hope that in the future, during a time like this, we would kind of be more strategic in how we go about increasing any form of taxes. And that's all I have. Thank you.
All right. Alderman from the 14th.
Okay. I echo the sentiments. You know, I had talked to Alderwoman Clark Hubbard about this, and being an educator all my life, I know the importance of early childhood education as well as educating parents. This is critical. And I think, you know, when we look at it in the big picture, the early childhood education could ward off a lot of the violence we're having in the community now, along with parent education. I think that, am I being heard?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I think that, you know, we do have to put it out there for the people, but, you know, the timing, as the Alderwoman Hubbard said, it's critical. I would have liked it for a better day, but, you know, it is what it is. I will vote in favor of it because I do realize how critical early childhood education. And I don't know, I haven't been able to find this out, if there will be parenting education, because you know, the parents as teachers are their very first teacher. And that's, if you have unstable parents, you know, it just goes all the way up. But as this unfolds and I learn more about it, I will support it to put it out to the people at this point, and hopefully, you know, people will see the need. And I echo the Alderwoman for the first. It's a property tax. It doesn't put undue strain on those lower income people. But at the same time, I think, you know, those people that are paying property taxes sometimes get a little tired of being tapped into. But we'll see how it goes. I appreciate Alderman Hubbard's efforts on this, and I think that, you know, we would be remiss if we didn't give the people a chance to vote on it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 25th.
Thank you,
There
Mr.
you go.
Mayor. So I just also would like to echo the comments made by the Alderwoman from the 14th, the 1st, and the 5th. I'm going to end up voting for this because I do believe that we, you know, should allow our constituents the opportunity to decide whether or not they would want the tax increase itself. You know, obviously this is a very worthwhile endeavor, and you know, I'm all for trying to support you know, childhood education and parent education and things of that nature. We definitely need more of that. I am suspect of the circumstances and unfortunately the timing of this. I'm not sure if this is going to be a measure that passes in November, given the economic environment that we're in right now. But ultimately, that's going to end up being the decision of our constituents, because it'll be on the ballot. So you know, I trust them to make the right decisions in that respect. And so you know, I'll leave it in their capable hands. I will add that the organization that gets this money, it does go directly to them. So we have a variety of different organizations that are funded through our property taxes. The citizens of the city, you know, sometimes get confused that all of that money comes to the city, which it does not. About 60% of the funds through the property tax go directly to our public schools. And then the other 40% are split up between the city and other taxing districts, such as the library system, the museums district, and mental health board, and others. And so, I think it's important to call that out whenever we're having a conversation around property taxes, is that this is not money that goes directly to the city. In many cases, it often, and frankly, 80% of it goes directly to these other taxing entities. So, I do applaud Alderwoman Clark Hubbard that we're looking at the property tax versus the sales tax. That's just a very regressive way to continue looking at things, trying to address through sales tax. So thank you for that. But otherwise, I'm planning to support this, and look forward to the continued conversation up to November when it's on the ballot.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 15th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, and I'd like to thank the Alderwoman from the 26th Ward for bringing this forward. As many of you know, I worked in early childhood for many years before running for office, and I think it's one of the most important investments that we can make. Even before COVID, a lot of our early childhood providers in this city and in this state are struggling. They're struggling because the state does not provide a reimbursement rate that covers what the true costs of the programs often are. They're struggling because of staff turnover. Since state funding is so low, it's hard to attract and retain quality staff for long periods of time. And I think that, while I definitely share the sentiment about whether this is the right time or not, I think we're also seeing that we're having a tremendous issue around childcare and early childhood education right now. As folks are being called back into work, there is not the supply of early childhood options and daycare options for families at the moment to try to figure out how they navigate in our new normal. And at the same time, knowing that early childhood providers have to put in different regulations and safeguards in order to address COVID within their facilities, they're also experiencing increased costs. And I do think that people in our city see early childhood as a priority, as something that needs funding, and I actually really like that this is going to the mental health board, because I think it's very important that our early childhood options are trauma informed. We know that 80% of the brain is formed by age 3. And so those early investments are incredibly, incredibly important. And if we can get this passed, I think it'll make a world of difference for crime rates in the future, just like the Alderwoman from the 14th said, and set a whole nother generation of kids on track to be successful. So I would like to ask to be added as a co-sponsor, and just thank the Alderwoman from the 26th again for bringing this forward. Thanks.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Add the Alderwoman from the 15th as a co-sponsor to Board Bill number 8.
Noted.
Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I appreciate the Alderwoman from bringing this to the board at this time. I think there's not a better time than right now. We all know that November elections are the historically most well-attended elections in the city of St. Louis. We also know that anecdotally, this has been an issue in our city, in our region for a long time. We have report after report. The first time I remember reading about it was via a call to action through Ford through Ferguson. We've had For the Sake of All. We have the First Steps to Equity report. And we know, as the Alderwoman from the 15th said, the statistics are staggering. 90% of the brain gets developed before age 5. 50% of kids are less likely to require special ed or become teen parents if they have access to high quality education early childhood, and 70% of them are less likely to be arrested before the age of 18. In our city, we have 28 neighborhoods that either have parents struggling to afford early childhood education for their children, or they do not have enough access to subsidized care, or there's just not enough providers overall. And that is all over the neighborhoods, from north of Del Mar to Dutchtown and Bevo and Patch in South City. It's a critical need. We have come together in terms of understanding that we have to address the violence in our city via cure violence. And this is a way to prevent children from coming, in touch with some of the snares and traps that have led our city to be in the place it is now. And so I think this is a great first step in terms of going to our constituents to see if this is something they value. And we have a lot more work to do in terms of not just providing the number of spaces, but high quality spaces, paying the employees what they deserve to be paid, and a number of other issues. So I will be supporting this bill today. And again, thank you, Alderwoman Hubbard, for bringing this to the floor.
Alderman from the 24th.
Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the board. I just want to thank the Alderwoman from the 26th for her leadership on this. During this pandemic, we've seen a lot of signature gathering drives for ballot initiatives just kind of ultimately fail because there's no meaningful way to get out and gather those signatures right now. And I'm a pretty firm believer that those ballot initiatives brought forward by the voters are an important part of our system. I think that this is an incredibly important bill. It's going to be a hard sell in some parts of the city, I think. So I hope that we do have a robust education campaign on it moving into the general election. But I'll be supporting anything that helps people remain in the city when they have children. We've heard so many times people have kids and then leave the city to go to the county, to go to St. Charles. And if this helps people remain in the city after they have children, I'll be all for it. And Madam Clerk, if you could please add me as a co-sponsor, I would appreciate it. That's all I have. Thank you.
Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Add the Alderman from the 24th as a co-sponsor to Board Bill number 8.
So noted.
Alderwoman from the 8th. Alderwoman from the 8th.
I think, okay, there we go. Sorry, this muting and unmuting here. Thank you, Mr. President, and members of the board. And thank you so much to Alderwoman Hubbard for bringing this forward. I think I am very impressed with all of the I think that's about is needed for our children, what is lacking in our city. And I think that, again, I also agree that a property tax is the more equitable way to go about funding something like this. And like the, I believe it was the Alderwoman from the 15th, I could be mistaken, described this money does go, or Alderman from the 25th, I believe, described that this money does go directly to the mental health board. It is authorized by state statute. The mayor does appoint the members of the mental health board, but those appointees do come through the Board of Aldermen. So we do have an opportunity to weigh in when those folks are appointed. And so to the Alderwoman from the first concerns, I believe we should be robustly vetting those nominees as they come through. Mr. President, if I could inquire of the Alderwoman from the 26th.
Alderwoman from the 26th, will you yield the question to the Alderwoman from the 8th?
Yes.
Alderwoman from the 8th, please proceed.
Thank you, Alderwoman. Again, thank you so much for bringing this. My question I heard at the very beginning, if you could just restate for us, you said you spoke with Mike Dauphin, the assessor, and he said that the tax would not be collected off of our property holders until when would that come through?
2022, because it won't be implemented until 2021, which means it'll be collected in 2022. It's behind. It would have to been voted on and passed by September of this year for it to be collected in 21. So for that reason, it won't begin to be collected till 2022.
Okay, thank you. That's really all the questions I have for you. And to be important to communicate as this goes out to the voters as well, that you know, we are going to be looking for an economic recovery, and I don't think that any of us are of the belief that that will happen this year or next year, and hopefully we'll be back on the move by 2022 when those taxes are collected. I do want to speak on behalf of my constituents in that we are one of the wards that is doing really well in the city of St. Louis. Our home values are on the increase. Home sales, home renovations, all of those things within the 8th ward are doing really well. But with that comes a significant cost to the people who have lived here for a very and a lot of that is because of tax abatements that were given. And so I do want to call this specific piece out to my colleagues as we look towards property taxes, we look towards equitably funding important things for the future of our children, for the future of our city, that we take a really hard look at how we are giving out tax incentives, because they have a significant cost on long-term families, on people with fixed incomes. Like the Alderwoman from the 5th said, that people do lose their homes for failure to pay property taxes. And so this is going to be important as we go forward. And I think that we should be able to face our constituents and justify giving tax abatements at the same time as we are asking them to increase their property taxes. So I would just encourage my colleagues as we move forward through this, that we take a hard look, and in an economic recession that could follow this pandemic, that we maybe reevaluate how we are giving those things out and how we are funding all of this, funding our public schools, and how those property taxes can disproportionately impact people who didn't have the luxury of getting a tax abatement. Thank you, Mr. President. That's all I have.
All right, thank you. Alderwoman from the 27th.
That's okay. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
Okay.
Alderwoman from the 13th.
Thank you, President and members of the board. I would like my name added to this bill, and I have the same concern. Just wanted to point out about the timing and all that the last time the city rose to the occasion for the schools, and generally they do. So I will again, but I have the same concern as everyone else does, but I think the need is paramount. Thank you.
All right, Madam Clerk, please make note of that. Add the Alderwoman from the 13th as a co-sponsor to Board Bill number 8. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderwoman from the 26th, you're recognized to close.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank all of my colleagues for all of their comments and let them know that I 100% share in the same concern of timing. Again, when I first started talking to these groups, mind you, it was prior to this pandemic that we're in now, because I worked with organizations like We Power. There were some Washington University educators, mental health board, of course, a very diverse board of regional early childhood education leaders. We were working together, partially in my role as on the Parent Action Council for the St. Louis Public School Board, and then some other organizations to think about how we can approach this. And again, then pandemic hit. And it hit me like it hit all of you, like it hit all of our constituents. So yes, timing is a factor, but I don't want to operate in this timing is a fear. And no, for some people, no timing is going to be right for taxes. No timing, no matter what's going on. So it's important for us to make sure we give out accurate, educate our constituencies, let them know what this really means, be real and factual about it. Yes, this is an increase. Yes, you already paid 19 cents. Yes, this is a 6-cent increase. But you also have to weigh out what it would be, what the impact would be. So again, in talking with these groups prior to this, and when we again re-looked at it to talk about putting it on this November ballot, I had the same concerns that my colleagues do. But I think, and I believe, and I feel that we could come together for this, for early childhood education in the city of St. Louis, if for nothing else. So thank you so much again for all your concerns. I want to make sure that Alderwoman Tyus and Alderman Vaccaro know that allocation was key to me, and that was prior to the pandemic and prior to what we're dealing with now with the monies that are coming through. So they assured me of different things about that, about the allocation piece, about the board, about how they look at different programs and policies and everything when they move forward on allocating these monies. And then I do agree with Alderwoman Rice that it's important that we can look at the people before they get secured and before they get approved to be on the boards, which is what Alderwoman Tyus speaks about a lot as well. So again, thank you all. I appreciate you taking this bold step with me, alongside with me, especially with this being my first time. And with that, I renew my motion to perfect Board Bill 8.
It's been moved by the Alderwoman from the 26th, seconded by the Alderman from the 22nd and the 21st, that we perfect Board Bill number 8. Is there a request for roll call?
Yes, roll call.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Okay, did you get it?
Madam Clerk, we can't hear you.
Okay.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Come back to
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Ingracia.
Aye.
Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Roddy.
Aye.
Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderman Balmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy.
Aye.
Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Roddy.
Aye.
Alderman Todd.
Abstain.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
So do you mention have any problems with anybody?
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
What are you trying to score? Helen?
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
I was screaming, aye.
I'm sorry. 24 aye votes. And
Aye,
one
vote.
aye.
By your vote, you stay in the motion, Alderwoman from the 26th, and perfected Board Bill number 8. Congratulations, Alderwoman.
Board Bill 16, sponsored by Alderman Balmer, Alderwoman Clark Hubbard, and Alderman Vaccaro. An ordinance to provide for the borrowing of funds in anticipation of the collection of tax payments levied by the City of St. Louis, Missouri, for deposit in the General Revenue Fund for the calendar year ending December 31st, 2020, and remaining uncollected, and other revenues remaining to be collected and deposited into the General Revenue Fund for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021. All such revenues for the General Fund for the General Revenue Fund and the Treasury of the City of St. Louis, Missouri through the Missouri of the Tax and Revenue Anticipation Notes and the acquiring of credit enhancement, if necessary, in order to lower the cost of such borrowing, prescribing the form and details of such notes, authorizing and approving certain documents and other actions, and containing an emergency clause.
Alderman from the 10th, you recognize on the perfection of Board Bill number 16.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. I move for perfection of Board Bill 16.
Moved by
Board Bill number 8, sorry.
Second.
No, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 10th, and seconded by the Alderwoman from the 14th. Alderman from the 10th, please proceed on perfection of Board.
Mr. President, this is the annual bill that comes out of Ways and Means in anticipation of collection of tax payments. So what's called the trans bill, in case to cover our behinds, as to say, for all our debts and dues in case of emergency, are what funding, especially this year with our earnings tax not coming in until July 15th, there's a chance that we're going to cover some notes. So this is our annual bill that comes from the Comptroller's office. With that, I renew my motion. With any questions?
Any discussion? Alderwoman from the 8th, you're recognized.
I think we got the meat right this time. Thank you, Mr. President. Would the Alderman from the 10th yield for question?
Alderman from the 10th will yield a question to the Alderman from the 8th.
Sure, that's a possibility, sure.
Alderman from the 8th, please proceed.
Thank you so much. Alderman, so this is the same bill that comes before us every year, just as an extension so that we can continue to pay our bills. Is there, I was asked by a constituent, and so I wanted to follow up on this. Would this be an appropriate place to say if there are properties that are far behind in their taxes, more so than just the extension that we're giving folks this year? Would this type of would this bill be a place that we could do that to ask for those debts to be paid?
You're in other words, you're asking is I don't believe so, because you're talking about making residents pay their taxes.
Well, a giant property owner.
This is really when the city gets a bill, we don't have the money. This is we have a setup to borrow this money at a set rate and pay back. This has nothing. This doesn't involve. We can't go to the constituency and request that you all of a sudden have to pay because we need the money. This is something that we legally have to cover these debts, and this is our way of staying constant with that. So no, to answer your question, it is not, and I'm not a lawyer. I don't play one on TV, but my understanding completely of this is that these monies, they're in place for this specific reason, to cover debts as they come in.
Great. Okay. Thank you. That was my understanding as well. I just wanted to verify that on the record. Thank you so much.
But you can go knock on doors and say, hey, we need the money if you want, and see if they'll give it to you. Any further discussion?
Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 23rd, you recognize.
I was just going to add what Joe had already said. This money gets paid back every year in its entirety. It gets renewed every year. It's so we can pay our bills while we're waiting for the taxes to come in. The collector of revenue is the one who actually enforces people that don't pay their taxes after. I think they give them up to 3 years to get caught up. Some people take advantage of that, but then houses will go on a tax lien sale. But this is just solely a pot that we can draw money out so we can stay current with our bills, but it gets paid back 100% at the end of each year. That was all. But I think everybody knows that.
All right. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Alderman from the 10th, you recognize the close.
Thank you, Mr. President, and all my colleagues. With that, I'll renew my motion to move forward with Board Bill 16.
All right, it's been moved by the Alderman from the 10th, seconded by the Alderwoman from the 14th, that we perfect Board Bill number 16. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, is that the extent?
For perfection.
All right. Third reading consent calendar.
Board Bill 9.
Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the motion for the third reading consent calendar.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move for adoption of the third reading consent calendar.
Moved by the Alderman from the 22nd, entertain a second on that motion.
Second.
Seconded by the Alderman from the 16th and Alderman from the 13th. Any discussion? Any discussion? Madam Clerk, please call the roll. Madam Clerk, you probably need to speak up. We're not hearing you.
Alderwoman Claudia.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderwoman Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Gracia. Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Rice.
Aye.
Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderman Boomer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Martin.
Aye.
Alderwoman Murphy. Alderwoman Howard.
Aye.
I want it on mute when it's supposed to.
Alderwoman Green.
Aye.
Alderman Oldenburg.
Aye.
Alderman Roddy.
Aye.
Alderman Todd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Davis.
Aye.
Alderwoman Spencer.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad.
Aye.
Alderman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderman Vaccaro.
Aye.
Alderman Ryan.
Aye.
Alderman Cone.
Aye.
Alderwoman Clark Hubbard.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Navarro.
Aye.
President Reed.
Aye.
Alderman Bosley. Alderwoman Gracia.
Aye.
Alderman Kotar. Alderwoman Murphy.
Won't do it.
She said aye.
Aye. Aye. No, well.
We got you.
25 aye votes.
By a vote, you sustain the motion, Alderman from the 22nd, and third read and finally pass the aforementioned bill. Third reading report on engrossments.
We have none.
Report of enrollment.
Board Bill number 9.
All other business being suspended, the president shall in open session affix his signature hereto to the end that these may become law. We will dispense with line item 20 through 22, miscellaneous unfinished business.
We have none.
Announcements.
Resolution number 8 was referred to the Legislation Committee. Monday, May 25th, the office is closed in honor of Memorial Day. Tuesday, May 26th, Ways and Means will have a meeting, 10 a.m. webinar. Streets will have a meeting, 1 p.m. webinar. Wednesday, May 27th, Ways and Means will have a meeting, 10 a.m. webinar. Rules and Engrossment will have a meeting, 1 p.m. webinar. Thursday, May 28th, Ways and Means will have a meeting, 10 a.m. webinar. Friday, May 29th, full board meeting, 10 a.m. webinar. That is the extent of the announcement.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 6th.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Legislation Committee will meet on Wednesday, May 27th at 2 p.m.
All right, Madam Clerk, please make note of that legislation Wednesday at 2 p.m.
So noted.
Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Alderwoman from the 14th?
Yes, I would like to wish everyone a good Memorial Day weekend. Stay safe, wear your facial covering, and let's memorialize, let's remember what this holiday is about. It's not just the beginning of the summer, it's to commemorate those of the armed forces that have given their lives so that we can be here today. So please, recall those people, remember them, and have a good weekend.
All right, thank you. Alderman from the 22nd.
Actually, Mr. President, members of the board, Alderwoman Carol Howard did a great job saying what I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right. Any further announcements? Any further announcements? Also, could you all please join me in a moment of silence for Nancy Kistler from City Council's office. She passed away earlier this week. So please join me in a moment of silence for Nancy Kistler. Thank you. Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the motion to excuse.
Mr. President, members of the board, I move to excuse the alderman from the 3rd and 7th wards due to necessary absence.
I entertain a second on that motion.
Second.
Seconded by the alderman from the 10th. Any discussion? All in favor, signify saying aye.
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 Oppose?
No.
Motion carries. Alderman from the 22nd, you recognize on the motion to adjourn.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the board, I move to adjourn until next Friday, May 29th, 2020.
Moved by the alderman from the 22nd. I entertain a second on that motion. Seconded by the alderman from the 13th and the alderman from the 25th. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Stand adjourned. Thank you all.
Bye. Have a nice